This is Alex, and welcome to Barely Braided, where we're taking a deep dive into foster care, adoption, and all things parenting, even the sticky stuff. Welcome to episode 24. This one is especially aimed at our friends over in the DC area, but I also think this info can be beneficial for foster and adoptive parents and just parents everywhere. We have another very special guest today. Krislyn from the organization Best Kids Inc. holds a bachelor's degree in family life services as well as a master's in nonprofit leadership and management. She began her career journey in residential foster care and has worked with many youth-serving nonprofits, including time as an executive director at Big Brothers Big Sisters in Maui, where she is originally from. She's lived in the DC area for almost 9 years now and has recently taken up golf and photography as hobbies outside of work. That is a very impressive resume, and I know we're going to learn a lot from her today. Welcome, Krislyn. Thank you for sitting down and talking to me today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to talking with you.
Yes, me too. So first of all, I don't think I've ever met anybody from Maui.
There's not too many of us, especially this far away.
So how long did you live there?
So I was born and raised there. So I lived there through 18 before I went to college. Spent 8 years living in California, Southern California, and then moved back to Maui for 5 years before moving back out here east to DC.
That sounds amazing. I've always heard that it's a great place to visit, but I've never actually been there. Would you recommend it as a travel destination?
Oh, definitely. It's really beautiful. It's a little on the pricey side, but it's a really, really special place. Obviously, it's very near and dear to my heart. I mean, that's where I'm from. I would definitely not recommend going right now, obviously, with the pandemic, but hopefully things will clear up soon and people will be able to go back and enjoy, how beautiful it really is there.
Yeah, I am looking forward to the end of the pandemic and being able to kind of more freely travel and just kind of get back to normal as far as life is concerned overall.
Yeah, I think we all are.
So I know I didn't prepare you for this, but in your intro, I mentioned that you were involved in residential foster care. And I'm not sure if many of our foster or adoptive parents are super familiar with that. And I know my current foster daughter, Ari, her caseworker, that was also his previous job. Can you tell us a little bit about that role?
Sure. So that was, one of my first jobs out of college. And it was really, I honestly can't remember the job title, but basically it was working front lines, so it was a long-term foster care home. So youth were in there for, sometimes years, depending on their different situations. And basically, we would have shifts of staff that would come in and kind of operate as the parents in a traditional household. So we would be, cooking, cleaning, getting them to do chores, helping with homework, going shopping, pretty much doing everything that parents typically do is what that job was for me. I had never really worked with foster youth before. Definitely had worked with youth in poverty and similar difficult situations, but it gave me a lot of insights to some of the trauma that they've experienced, seeing how their relationships are either succeeding or not succeeding. I mean, we would supervise family visits sometimes. Some of those would go great. Some of them would go really not so great. And so just seeing all the ups and downs that these kids kind of go through was, and being there for the aftermath, right? And seeing how a lot of that trauma plays out in terms of behavior and how they respond in school and different things gave me a lot of insights to how really important it is for them to have stable relationships and to feel cared about and to have structure and things that just every child needs, right? All of us need in some capacity.
Yeah. And I also feel like I can kind of see how that may have influenced your work now with Best Kids, but we'll get into that. Mm-hmm. Question about residential foster care. The place where these foster youth live and where you worked in that position, does it just look like a typical house?
Yeah, so it was a facility for 12 youth. So it was actually two houses, one right in front of the other, and each house could hold 6 or 7 youth. So, sometimes we'd have 5 boys and 7 girls. Sometimes we'd have 6 and 6. But so the girls were in the front house and the boys were in the back house. And then we had usually 2 staff members there during every shift, except for the overnight per house. And then overnight shift, there was just 2 staff members, 1 for each house.
So in that position, do you sleep at night or does someone need to stay up all the time?
Yeah, so the overnight shift, they would stay up the whole time. I rarely ever worked that one. So that it is a difficult position, but I mean, it's just like any other overnight job. You adjust your schedule to that. So yeah, that one would be tough because usually when those staff arrive, the kids are already in bed. So they, if the kids wake up in the middle of the night, they help them out with whatever's going on, and then they'll get them up and start getting them ready for school the next day.
What's the typical age of youth in residential foster care?
So it really varies. This home specifically was 6 or 12. I would say there are definitely more residential placements. And this was a long time ago and in California, so things may have changed since then. But more homes are for adolescents just because they're usually difficult to place in foster homes and to not only place, but to stay in one foster home. If you look at a lot of teenagers, they usually hop around a little bit more than the younger ones in terms of foster care placements. So a lot of times that means that they end up in group homes just because they aren't able to find a stable placement elsewhere for some of these youth.
Okay. And I'm sorry we're getting so deep into this residential foster care thing, but I know so little about it and it's very interesting to me. And I think it would be beneficial for the listeners too, to kind of have a little bit of insight into residential foster care. The last question I have about it. So if I am somebody who's like taking the foster parent training classes, or I'm interested in maybe adopting a youth from residential foster care, is that an option?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the youth and kind of what their needs are. Some youth just have higher needs and they need more of that like structure that sometimes only residential care can provide. So it really depends. But there are, at least in California, there were, homes for different ages, of course. There were homes for different severity of like behaviors and things that were being exhibited. So, ours was kind of on the lower end. So a lot of times, youth would go from residential to foster placement or back with their families, depending on whatever their permanency plan was. So it definitely is possible. Usually there's, a time where you're actually spending time together. You start doing like overnight visits, seeing how things go. It's not just like an immediate placement. Usually both sides kind of work up to that to make sure that it's going to be successful before they actually leave the care home.
Well, that's really cool. When I was doing my foster parent training classes, we did not learn a whole lot about this type of foster care. So thank you for kind of explaining it.
Yeah, no problem. And then there's long-term homes and there's short-term. So you basically, like long-term, you expect the youth to kind of be there for a while, depending on their situation. Short-term is more that they just need a place for this youth to stay for a couple of weeks until whatever placement gets their self ready to take this youth on. So there's kind of that layer of it too. I will throw out just a short plug. If you've ever seen the movie Short Term 12.
No.
I believe it's still on Netflix, but it actually was based off of the company that I worked for in California. My friend actually is the director and writer of it.
Oh, wow.
And it's a really good movie for just any foster care people or people interested in that in general, because it does kind of address a lot of the trauma and things to expect as you're working with this population. But it really does give you a glimpse of what residential foster care, the structure, the amount of structure, the amount of interaction between staff and youth. So I definitely recommend that movie if you are interested in learning more just about foster care in general, but particularly residential foster care.
Yeah, when I'm online, like in the foster parent groups, I feel like I see people asking for recommendations on like books and movies and podcasts about foster care and adoption all the time. So you said it's called Short Term 12?
Yep, exactly. And it's a really good movie. I'm a little biased because it's my childhood that did it, but it's won several awards. It has a really high rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and it is a very good movie.
Yes, I am checking that out.
Brie Larson got her start. Keith Stanfield, like a lot of the stars today got their start in that movie. So it's kind of cool.
Definitely checking that one out. So transitioning over to what you're doing now, tell us about Best Kids. What's the organization about and what's your role?
Yeah, so I started as executive director 7 years ago, 7.5 years ago, I guess now, of Best Kids. It's a mentoring organization that provides one-on-one mentoring for youth in foster care. So that's, officially our mission. But kind of going back to how I saw just the need for consistent relationships. I'm not the founder, but I definitely support the mission and agree with the mission. Just seeing the need for those consistent relationships and how sometimes youth in foster care don't get a lot of those because of a lot of the transition they go through, different foster parents, different relatives coming in and out, teachers, there's just not a lot of consistent adults. And so that's really our mission, is to give them at least that one person that they can count on. So regardless of which home they go to, or if they have to move schools, they're having to change so many things in their life all the time. So that at least they have that one person that they know what to expect with. They know that they can have fun. They know they can talk to that person about things going on. So that's really what we do. My role as executive director is, overseeing all the operations. We have an amazing staff that works directly with the youth and families and mentors, more so than I do. But, I handle more of the financial stuff, all the HR, program oversight, making sure everything's going how it's supposed to be going, a lot of fundraising, that type of thing. But my favorite thing is I do occasionally get to work with the youth and families, and, that's always a fun time.
Yeah. So I know we talked about Best Kids operates out of the DC area, and maybe I'm kind of catching you off guard here, but do you know, are there any plans maybe to expand the program into other areas or other states?
Not any concrete plans. We've definitely have thought about it, and I think there are needs for it throughout the country. There are other similar programs like ours, not too many, but there are some that I know of that exclusively work with youth in foster care. There are other programs that, that are more general mentoring programs, but that do work with some foster care youth. So, there are some others out there. If we were to expand in the near future, it would likely be closer to this area. So probably within like Virginia and Maryland to start out with. But we thought about it, and we've had that question come up, from other states as well.
Yeah, it just seems like such an important and such a beneficial organization. I see that there's such a need for the great work that you all do. And I'm just like over here in Nashville, Tennessee, like I don't know if there's a similar program here. I'd like to look into it, but having a Best Kids branch in Nashville, I would be 100% on board for calling to see how I could get involved.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with Nashville. I know that they have a pretty strong mentoring presence in Tennessee. So I'm not quite sure if there's one specifically for foster youth, though.
Interesting. Okay. Well, so the reason I first heard about Best Kids is because I saw some marketing materials for a virtual concert event that you all held back in October. So tell me a little bit about the fundraiser events and how those work and what to expect if I were to purchase tickets.
Yeah, so this is our first time doing an event like that. Obviously, COVID has impacted all of us in so many ways, and we've had to shift the way we do things. And so, typically our fall fundraiser is an in-person reception type event. We have a silent auction, pretty traditional to a lot of what nonprofits do for their fundraisers. And, that just wasn't possible this year. So we decided to change things up. We typically celebrate the arts for our fall fundraiser regardless. So this year we were like, you know what, let's just do music and performing arts. And so we did a lot of spoken word and music and brought together artists from this area that we could feature, some definitely really well-known names, but some just more up-and-coming artists. And we did a really great show that we were able to do 100% virtually. So it was really successful. We are, kind of seeing how things are going to go for next year. We might continue to go this route. Every spring we also do a 5K, a superhero 5K race in the DC area. So we're kind of waiting to see if we're going to be able to do that again, because we had to do that virtually this past year as well. So, everything that all the events we do are on our website, which is bestkids.org. People can, check those out regardless of where they're living now, right? If we're doing things virtually, you can run in our 5K, anywhere in the world just about. So, as we get more information about dates and details, we put those up pretty prominently on our website and start advertising on our social media as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I know typically you do the in-person events as opposed to the virtual events, but I would just like to make an on-the-record request that they continue virtually as well, so that way we can be involved too.
Yeah, I think for the 5K, for sure, there's going to be a virtual option moving forward permanently. So, even if we are able to have it here in person, there will be probably a lower cost virtual option for folks to participate still. So I can pretty much guarantee that. And then, depending on what the format of our event's going to be next year, we'd obviously love to continue that trend to be so that, especially I have family and most of them in Hawaii and, definitely friends around the country that would like to support, so that makes it easier for them as well.
I think this is kind of a sign. About 2 weeks ago, I downloaded this app on my phone, Couch to 5K. I'm not a runner at all. And I did day one and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. And then I got really busy and kind of lazy and I just haven't continued. So I think this is my sign that I need to continue the Couch to 5K program before your event. So that way I can be ready to go.
Sounds good. You got a little bit of time. So right now we're looking at May 1st. May is National Foster Care Month. So we're going to kick it off May 1st if we do have an in-person event. And if it's virtual, we'll probably do it just throughout the month of May. So,
trust me, I'm going to need all that time. So how old are the children that Best Kids usually serves?
Yeah, so starting at 6 years old, they're not all 6 years old when they come to us, but yeah, so we serve youth 6 through 21. And we actually have a few youth over 21 right now too that are still in our program. But, as long as we have capacity to keep them in, we're committed to letting them be part of our program still. Okay,
so how many children are in the program at any given time, like right now, for example?
Yeah, so right now I think we have about almost 140. In the past, we've looking at a full year, we've served up to 186, I want to say, was one of our biggest years. We are going to probably be downsizing a little bit this year just with funding losses that we're experiencing. So we're probably going to drop down to about 100 next year would be my guess. So yeah, it fluctuates a little, but yeah, I mean, when I first started, we had about 65. So we've definitely grown quite a bit.
That's amazing. What does the process look like for matching children with mentors?
Yeah, so I mean, our first step on the youth side is once we get a referral from their social workers, we'll take a look at that. We'll talk with the social workers, get a real good sense of kind of what the biggest needs are of the youth from the social worker's perspective. And then we go out and we meet with their family or whoever their caregiver is at the time, as well as the youth, and talk to them about mentoring, make sure they know what it is and what to expect and that they want it, right? That's really important. And then we get to know them a little bit, what kinds of things they like to do, what they're interested in, what they want to get out of mentoring. So, that staff member really tries to get a sense of who might be a good type of person to match this youth with. We definitely take into account different preferences in terms of, can't guarantee it, but in terms of, race, gender, religion, those types of things, we will consider those preferences as best we can. And then on the mentor side, similar process, somebody applies, we get to know them, we interview them, do some reference checks. Of course, we have a pretty extensive background check process. But throughout that process, we get a good sense of their personalities, what types of youth would be a good fit for them. And then we basically kind of send out an anonymous kind of bio to the youth and to the mentor and say like, hey, we have this person in mind. Here's a little bit about them. Does it sound like somebody that you would want to be matched with? And once we kind of get a unanimous yes, then we'll schedule a match meeting is what we call it, where we have our staff member, the caregivers, the mentee, and the mentor all come together, and our staff kind of facilitates it. So it's a little less awkward and not as much of a blind date, even though it kind of is in some ways. We have a lot of mentees are nervous, but there's a lot of mentors that are really nervous about it too. And so we try to lead them through some get to know you types of activities and talk about what mentoring is going to be together. And then we kind of let them go on their own and then just check up with them and see how things are going.
So provided somebody passes all of the screening and the background check and that kind of thing, can anybody be a mentor, or are there other restrictions, like maybe they can't be a current foster parent, or is there anything else? Can anybody be a mentor, I guess?
Just about, yeah. I mean, as long as, they're coming at it with the right mindset and that they're willing to be open and learning and getting as much out of the relationship as they're pouring in. Relationships don't work if they're one-sided. So we definitely, somebody coming in that's coachable, that listens, that is willing to do what they need to do to make the relationship work, then yeah, that's pretty much the only criteria other than making sure that they can pass all the screenings and background checks.
Okay. So what kind of things do the mentors do with the children? Do they take them out to enjoy the activities that they're interested in, or do they phone call, email, text? How does that work?
So that has changed quite a bit over this year, as you can imagine. This time last year, it would have been very little phone calls and texts and video chats, although some of that did definitely happen. Yeah, lots of just going out to different activities together, museums, sports games, theater, sometimes just going for walks. We, as an organization, try to provide a lot of different opportunities for activities that they can participate in together. So a lot of arts and sports types of things. So, whatever is interesting to them. And when we had one pair, this one always sticks out of my mind, is that they just wanted to learn how to make pickles. And so
What?
how to make pickles, so a lot of really kind of unique things that they come up with. So, they'll do everything from pottery together to, running together, working out together. So there's just a lot of flexibility of things that they can do together. And I should say each mentoring relationship kind of comes up with their own individual goals. These really are driven by the youth, or we ask that they are driven by the youth. So, sometimes that kind of guides them in terms of what types of activities they do together.
That sounds so fun. I love the idea of this. I so want to be involved right now. And I'm wondering too, is the bond ever so strong between the mentor and the mentee that the mentor becomes licensed for foster care or licensed to adopt the person they're mentoring?
I think it might have happened once in our organization, and this is before I started. So to my knowledge, no, it's not very typical. However, we have had quite a few mentors that were thinking about becoming foster parents that have kind of used this as a little bit of a test run, so to speak. And though they didn't end up becoming a foster parent for this youth in particular, they went on to become foster parents of other. So,
I love that.
And I don't want to put it out there, come and just be a mentor for that sole purpose. So, we're expecting that mentors dedicate themselves to this youth as their mentor, but obviously the requirements and roles of a mentor are a little less stringent than they are of a foster parent. So it is a good way to kind of get a sense of if this is something that you want to consider. Mentoring is a good way of kind of seeing how that might work out.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a really good first step. And then maybe that mentor just decides, hey, this is my calling. I am born to be a mentor. Or sometimes they're like, hey, I think I can dedicate my, every day to this and become a foster adoptive parent as well. But I'm wondering, how long is the mentorship program? Is there like an official start and end?
Nope. It's, as long as possible. We definitely ask mentors to commit to at least 1 year, but we really push that it's going to be even longer than that. We have mentoring relationships that have been going for 9 years at this point, lots of them, 5 or 6 years. So that's kind of our goal, is to create these really long lasting relationships. We've literally had kids grow up in our program and see them, graduate and go on to their lives. It's pretty kind of cool to see those impact of those long-term relationships.
That's amazing. So I'd imagine you've seen hundreds of success stories while working with Best Kids. Can you share any of those?
Yeah. Success looks very different for our youth. And we're not kind of like an academic focused program where we look at, graduation as being the only indicator of success. Some of our youth come to us and they aren't having problems in school, but maybe they're having problems with socialization or just with some mental health issues. So we really strive to meet youth where they're at and really help them with what they feel they need the most help with. So that kind of defines success very differently. So, for example, we had just recently, obviously, we had a couple of mentees who just turned 18 recently that wanted to vote. And so they worked with their mentors to help get them registered and, teach them about that process and civic engagement. So yeah, that might not be a completely life-changing outcome, but I still see that as success, right? Is because they're learning kind of an independent living skill that they might not have otherwise learned had it not been for their mentors. We had another youth recently who is gay and came out to his mom, I want to say maybe 2 years ago, and it was a really difficult process. It didn't go over so well at the beginning. And the mentor was really there to support him, but also to support their relationship with the mom and the son together. And they eventually came to a place where, things got better and they were able to work things out, which I definitely helped the youth in so many ways to be able to alleviate that burden and focus on work and school. And so, those are just a couple. I mean, we definitely have had youth that start reading better as after they practice reading a little bit more with their mentors. We've had youth get their first jobs with the help of their mentors, graduate with the help of their mentors. We have youth that are parents. Sometimes they come to us, they're referred to us, and they're already parents. Sometimes, they become parents while they're in our program, and their mentor is really just there, regardless of what they're going through, to help process through that in a more successful way. So that's really what our goal is, that no matter what the youth are going through, that they have at least that one person that's going to stick with them regardless and help them through whatever situation they encounter.
I love that you brought up a couple examples where not only the mentor was benefiting the actual child in foster care, but also there are positive benefits for their family, their biological families, or even maybe the children of the foster youth. Because I'm so focused on, okay, what benefits to the mentee exist here? But really, there are multiple people that could also see those benefits of that mentorship. That's really cool.
Yeah. And I think we had one, this was several years ago now, but we had one youth who was kind of in pre-adoptive placement, and things were kind of a little rocky. And their mentor actually played a really critical role in making that adoption possible and permanent.
Wow.
And really just kind of helping that youth to kind of navigate the transition and understand what was going on, and also working with the family, right, to be able to make sure that this was going to be a positive thing for the youth. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of those different success stories there. We have, especially with the hard times because of COVID recently, this isn't an expectation or something we even ask our mentors to do very often or even approve of, but obviously given the special circumstances, mentors have been helping families with groceries, or just taking them to the store to be able to go get groceries, those types of things. So, they really do become part of the family in a lot of the situations.
Wow, that's so awesome. Has Best Kids ever considered implementing like a permanent virtual mentorship program?
We're definitely considering it. I think regardless of how things go, that virtual mentoring will be a larger component of what we do than it has in the past. We're still kind of at the decision point to see if a 100% virtual mentoring program is something we want to do. But yeah, we're not quite there yet. We're honestly really trying to see how successful the virtual mentoring relationships can be with this population. And I think it's still a little too early to tell that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I can also kind of see that it would be so beneficial for the mentor and the children to be like physically in this same space and together. I can definitely see that would probably be like the first best case scenario, but maybe as like if that's not an option, as it's not really right now, as much as it could be, how the virtual mentorship could maybe be like the second best scenario. So for people that are not local to the DC area, how can adults best serve or create mentoring partnerships with youth in foster care? And maybe you don't know that since you are specifically in the DC area, but I thought I'd throw it out there.
I mean, I think most states at least have CASA programs, or
Yes.
a lot of them do. So that's very similar. So definitely seek that out as an option. It's a little more focused on the advocacy or legal side, but there's still an opportunity to kind of really learn through that process and volunteer in that way. You can check out mentoring.org. There's a way to find programs in your area that you can mentor, and you can search it by foster youth programs and see what's in your area, what's near you. And if there are none, then there's obviously other programs you can do that aren't specific just to foster care as well.
Okay. So how can my listeners and I best support the Best Kids organization? I know there's probably an option on your website where we could financially benefit the company and donate money. Could we also donate time, or are there physical items that would help with the success of the organization?
Yeah, so definitely if you go to our website, bestkids.org, there's the donate button, there's a become a mentor button right up top there that you can click on. In terms of, other volunteer opportunities, we don't typically have too many. I mean, if you're local in this area, we could use volunteers for some of our events that come up. Yeah, at this point, we don't have a ton of other volunteer opportunities. We do occasionally, like for the holidays, holiday. This year, we're going to be doing holiday care packages for the families. So there is opportunity to donate in that way, in terms of supplies and things that families could use, grocery cards, toys, those types of things that we can put into those care packages.
Perfect.
So those are a few of the ways, yeah.
Yes. And I am going to ask that I think I got on your mailing list. So when the virtual events come up, I'll be sharing them on my Instagram page.
Yeah, awesome.
And yeah, I'm really excited. I'm excited about the 5K. I'm kind of nervous about it, but I'm going to do it. And then I'm hoping that maybe you all do another virtual concert because I would love tickets for that. Are there plans in the works for another virtual concert? Do you know?
Not as of yet. We might actually kind of re-air some of our concert again. I mean, we did a pretty extensive show. We did about 10 hours of concert. So we're gonna probably shorten that a little bit and do some mini concerts out of it in the coming year. So definitely stay tuned to our social media because we'll be promoting that there. All of our social media is at Best Kids DC. And we're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of them, Twitter. So you can find us there. So yeah, we probably will be doing some mini concerts moving forward, but I don't have exact dates and stuff yet.
Love that. Okay. Well, when you do, I will be sharing those on my social media and then in the podcast description as well. And we can talk about that on the podcast because I just think it's such a cool idea and it's a really great organization to donate to and support. So thank you so much for telling me all about it and your history. I'm really excited about the 5K.
Yeah, we would definitely love to have you. And the thing that's really awesome about our event is if it's your first 5K, it's a really good first 5K because it's really not that competitive. Lots of families participate. We dress up as superheroes if that's something that you enjoy or not. It's not mandatory, but there's a lot of really cute pictures that come out of it, and makes participating a little more fun there. So it's a really good, family-friendly race. We definitely have some runners, but not, it's not a really competitive where it's all competitive runners. So
I love that. I will.
Everybody. And a lot of people even walk it. And that's perfectly fine too.
Yep. That's me. I will be there in my superhero attire at the very bottom of the list, huffing and puffing.
No problem. You're on the list. That's the thing that matters.
Well, thank you so much. And before we wrap up, I do want to again give a big thank you to our podcast editor, Ruben Andrews. And as a reminder, if you enjoyed this episode, I know you did, please consider leaving a 5-star review on the Purple Podcast app. I read every single one of them, and it's definitely my favorite part of the day. The comments are always so sweet, and I love hearing about the journeys that my listeners are on. And of course, Krislyn, thank you so much for talking to us today about Best Kids and what you do for the DC area and your community and your local kids in foster care. It's amazing. I'm really appreciative that you talked to me today.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for having me. And, if you can't get involved with us, there's definitely ways that you can support, youth in your area, especially youth in foster care. So definitely check those out.
Yep. And join me on the 5K, the virtual 5K. I'll be posting info on my Instagram page. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.